to record. Uh, this weekend's going to be a lot of fun. For those who are watching this later, we're going to start by continuing with Dancing with Lions series. So we're working through the Bhavana Krama with Kamala Sheila and a couple other texts. So the first session we're going to be doing is going to be a continuation of that, and then we're going to split off into doing the Lions dance. Um, so the uh, the irony is that if we were to work methodically through the Dancing with Lions series, that it would probably take us, I don't know, 18 months to actually get to the Lions Dance meditation itself. Um, but I didn't want to wait that long. So, for those of you who want to learn the fundamentals and the basics and kind of go through the whole process of getting into a frame where the Lion's Dance is really, really potent. That's kind of what we're doing with the series. Um, but then we're going to drop into the meditations directly, periodically. I don't know to what period. We'll see what the community wants. Um, so you'll hear from the morning session to the evenings, to the afternoon sessions. Hopefully, you'll be able to draw a couple threads that connect the information. Um, so with no further ado, let's dance with lions. Okay, cool. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Um, we are going to get started now. Let me just get my notes. A little preview for what's coming up at Spiritual Warrior, Dancing with Lions weekend workshop. So that's going to be right now. Yesterday was my mom's birthday. Shout out to my mom. Appreciate you. Uh, and then next Fast for Hunger is June 26th. So that's coming up. What day of the week is that? That's like a Wednesday or something. It's going to be next Thursday. So for those of you who have been following along for quite some time, once a month we skip 1 to 3 meals. And then the money that we didn't spend on food, we donate to feed local hungry people. Hunger is not something that is only in faraway countries. Hunger is something that is in all of our communities. So fasting is a really wonderful physiological practice. It helps your body take a break, just in the way that we need to take a break from our crazy lives sometimes. We don't actually give our biology a break on a regular basis, but in the same way that it's nice to clean up our own personal shop, it's really, really, really helpful to the human body to give it a chance to clean up, clean shop, fire the people who are the laggards, you know, and then bring in a new crew. So the body recycles a huge quantity of cells, and the cells which are performing least effectively are the ones that are most likely to become cancerous. Because cancer is just someone who misunderstood the job but kept on going because nobody corrected them. So fast for hunger is a chance to give our biology a rest. Um, but then also, if you are a student of the subtle body, the energy in the body and how it moves and how that affects our mind, then you'll recognize that by not using energy to do the extremely involved process of breaking food down and assimilating its nutrition into your being, um, all of that energy becomes available to other purposes. And so, my experience with fasting and then doing things like meditation or asana or just anything thoughtful is that I have a lot more energy to pull on, to pull from, because I'm not diverting it for digestion. And then there's a lot less inflammation in the body. So your body feels much more comfortable, which I didn't even realize the low level of noise, of low level inflammation throughout my body, that by just not eating for a little bit puts your whole state of being into a different level of like rest. So that's coming up on June 26th. Oh, sorry. And then the whole point here is to develop compassion, because that's the entire purpose of being a spiritual warrior is to live compassionately. And so one of the best ways to do that isn't by just giving our money away and thinking that that solves problems, but it's by developing and cultivating empathy for others. Um, it's not money that saves the world, it's connection of hearts that saves the world. So we're practicing empathizing with other people's hungry experiences so that we're motivated to consider their experience as a real thing, even though it may seem distant to us if we're in a privileged state. Um, so then instead of lunch at 12 p.m. Eastern Time on the 26th, we do a compassion meditation. Classic, beautiful teaching that I love on this. And this is so cool. There are many different forms of energy, different sources of energy. The most obvious one is food. You eat food, you get energy. The next subtle one is water, right? So you can go a long time without food, but you can go less time without water. And then the even more subtle version of energy is breath. You can go even less time without breath. And then the most subtle form of energy is hope. I thought that was such a cool teaching. Um, and the proof of that is that you can imagine that you're dying of thirst and starvation, and you might be on your last breath, in the middle of a desert, and then just in front of you, a meter away, you see food and water. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, energy comes. So compassion is hope. A world that's devoid of compassion is a world without hope. It's a world that believes that nothing can get better and that it's not worth it. But a world that's filled of compassion is a world of hope. It says that if we work together, if we care about each other, then things will get better for everybody. If in no other place than in our hearts. And so we can actually, if you do a good compassion meditation, you'll find that you are more satiated than any meal could actually bring you satiation. It's really, really, really interesting. When we're spiritually starved, then no matter what we consume in our world, we will not be satisfied. It's a it's a gnarly hunger. And so people turn to all kinds of substances and all kinds of distractions to feed a hunger that could only be satiated when we open our heart and love one another. That is incredible. So being in a state of fasted biology and then disciplining ourselves on the food of compassion, it's just really instructive. And Alexa, I know Alexa here has gone into deep retreat. I haven't gone into as deep a retreat as Alexa, and I know some people who watch the recordings. You've also done deep retreat. Um, the relationship to energy is so different when you're in deep retreat because all of the things that normally are inputs of energy don't exist. Social feedback, partners, consuming. There's this feeling of identity when we buy things, right? Or like, retail therapy. And so as you starve yourself of those normal sources of, energy and seeing how the body can be in an inflamed state by consuming those things, thinking that they're actually good food. We get to compare that with the energy we draw from the stillness of meditation and the cultivation of compassion. And it's like the difference between white bread and sugar, and like a bowl of quinoa or something. I don't know. Like it just feels different. And so we can really see that in this context of deep retreat, but we can also bring that into our everyday life. And this is a cool opportunity to do that. So if you'd like to join us, you can. Um, great. And then giving blood. I just have been giving blood ever since I was allowed to, and I think it's really cool. It doesn't cost me anything, you know, and you're literally giving life to people. It's just it's just a beautiful thing, I think. So anyway, in our culture at Spiritual Warrior, we like to fast and we like to give ourselves to others. So I invite you to give blood the week of July 7th. And as you know, my vision for Spiritual Warrior is to create a wave of culture shift of people who are living compassion in action. So these are two really obvious, gross ways to do that. Okay, so that's what's coming up this week and in the near future. Let's dance with some lions, shall we? Okay, so let's catch the flow of where we are. Um, for those of you who are jumping in for the first time, enjoy the ride. So this is class four. Where we've come in the flow of logic, we're going to be doing a big pivot point in this class. We're going to be going from kind of really hardcore logic and like analysis of the nature of consciousness into what it means to what it means to live a life that's connected with these logical frameworks. As you know, we don't do anything unless there's a logical basis to it. Otherwise, what are you doing? So, here's the logic. Omniscience, which is the capacity to know all things, with no obstacles of time or space. Omniscience helps us help all beings. That makes sense. If I knew everything, then I know how to help you. So it's really, really admirable to try to develop omniscience. Omniscience has a cause. It's not random. In the same way that you can develop your awareness, yesterday I was less aware than I was today. Oh, I'm so sorry I did that. I wasn't aware. Now I'm more aware. There was a cause for that growth of awareness. What is the maximum extent of how we can develop our awareness? If I can incrementally go 1% more in my awareness today to tomorrow, then where is the end of that potential? Well, if it has a cause for growth, then total omniscience also has a cause because it is a result. And every result must have a cause. That's logical. There's no such thing as a result without a cause. So because omniscience has a cause, it means that it can be developed, which is a big radical idea. How consciousness works is then what we got into of talking about how what consciousness really is, by definition, is a subject perceiving an object. That's all that consciousness is. And when we have an invalid support of that, then our consciousness is riddled with suffering. So invalid support is thinking that things are a way that they can never be. It's believing that the magician's show is true. It's believing that the scary guy on the movie screen is a real person right in front of you. And so by being mistaken by illusion and building our consciousness around illusory things, we're in for a rough go of it. Because then we punch a movie screen thinking that we're going to be able to actually make a difference in the world. Or, we become terrified by the magician who scares us thinking a rope is a snake. And so how often are we believing that things which are not true are true? And what's the result of that in our life? Oh, partaking in this substance will make me happy. Invalid support. Oh, yelling at this person because I don't like them will make me happy. Invalid support. So the consciousness, which is developed upon invalid supports, will fall into the water. And then we'll feel like we're drowning and we don't know why. It's because the supports were faulty. So the bridge of consciousness to take us over the pit of suffering could never stand. So understanding what a valid supportive consciousness is critical to developing a mind which is peaceful and happy and functional, one that could actually help other people. If we're lost in illusion, it's very difficult to help other people. So that's how consciousness works. When we mistake the nature of objects and subjects, that's an invalid supportive consciousness. And when we truly understand the nature of subjects and objects, who am I? Who are you? Really? Actually? That's a valid basis for consciousness. And because that is truth, it's limitless. And in order to create a limitless consciousness, we need a limitless basis to develop consciousness upon. So that's why a valid understanding of the nature of reality is important for developing the causes of omniscience. Whew! All right, we're doing great. Hang in tight here, guys. So, what do we do with that? If we buy that basis, if we subscribe to this school of thought, that understanding things accurately will help us, and believing that things are which are not true, believing them to be true, is going to inhibit the growth of our awareness and consciousness and happiness, then the next logical thing to think, and this is where the text goes, is we must train our mind to perceive things accurately. Wow. Not a very profound idea, but it's actually extremely profound. Um, and I actually really was wishing I said this last week, but I wanted to take the moment today, especially because for those of us who are going to stick it through to the whole weekend, you know, we might be meditating for 45 minutes at a time. And one of the things that happens when you begin to meditate is that you feel an itch on your face. And you want to go and you want to itch your face. But if you itch your face, it's actually quite disturbing once you've really stabilized your mind. To move the body at all is actually very disruptive. So what do you do? Do you itch your face or not? You know, it's just like, and then all of a sudden your mind is lost in this battle of should I itch my face or should I not itch my face? You're like, well, if I itch my face, well then I can go back to meditating. And if I don't itch my face, then I'm going to be distracted by this pain. And so that you're like, okay, what? So then the experiment that you run is I'm not going to itch my face. I'm just going to let the itch go, right? Because I want to stay still, because I see that a still body is the context for a still mind. So, and that's what I'm working on right now. And then the itch becomes intense. And then it becomes a pain. And you're like starting to freak out. All of a sudden your mind is creating this story of I am in danger. And you start to have a biological, physiological response to you are in danger. But then your logical mind gets involved and you're like, dude, I'm just sitting on a freaking cushion in my living room. I'm not in danger. Like, and then you have to prove it to yourself. Because at that point you're like, is it true? Am I in danger? And so now your whole being is being robbed. You've totally lost your purpose by this thing of I'm in danger, I must itch my face. And so then you break your concentration, you itch your face. There was nothing there. You weren't in danger. You itch your face and it goes away. What an interesting thing we just experienced. So when I started playing with that, I started saying, I'm gonna work through this. Has anybody done a cold plunge? Okay, so you're like, I'm in danger. I'm in danger. I'm gonna die. You know, your biology is like, get the F out, right? So all of this sensory information is telling you something which is not lacking valid basis. Like, yes, historically, if you fell into a frozen pond, that was a bad thing. But the truth is, in this moment, you're fine. And then you just gotta break through. You know what I'm talking about? Like you're like, if I just so you get through that like adrenaline horizon, and then you're in calmness again. And so much of our world is exactly like that. And so when you're feeling this itch on your face, in the same way that your body was like freaking out, if you can discipline yourself to be connected to the reality of your actual experience, and then you can break through, you realize that that was just an illusion and you were totally caught in an illusion. You're not actually in danger. It could be dangerous, but using the discipline of your logical capacities, you were able to break through. Uh, Jeremy says it's also a reaction to opposite current situation. Yeah. That's a great point. There's this really fun thing you guys can try, which is you ask someone to put their fist up and you don't tell them anything else. And then you just simply start pushing against their fist. 9 out of 10 people just start pushing against your fist simply because you're giving them an action and then they just react. They don't know why, which is hilarious because they did this to Hannah. And Hannah's so soft and chill. She just like absorbed it and smiled at me. I'm like, no, come on. You're supposed to see how mindless reaction is. But yeah, how often do we respond to something just to be the opposite of the thing which is coming at us without thinking critically, without saying, how do I want to show up in this moment? Like we just react. We don't respond. We don't take responsibility for our action. And so, um, okay, I just figured out how I'm going to relate this back to what I'm going to teach today. Um, so when you don't itch, it's like it itches, it becomes dangerous, it becomes a burning sensation, and then you break through. And then you realize that it was not even it wasn't even a thing. Um, and so I lived in the Dominican Republic when I was first learning how to meditate. And one of the commitments that I made was to live in a way that was nonviolent. Like I didn't want to create suffering in the world. I resolved myself to try hard to reduce suffering in the world. And if you were to meditate in the jungle, you would know that there's a lot of bugs who want your blood. And that is a real danger. That's not a fictitious itch. That is a real literal itch. But I refuse to kill the insects because I just don't believe in death. I just don't support it categorically. I just don't support avoidable death. And so at the beginning, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like I'm so itchy. I can't concentrate. But then but then the mind becomes disciplined because the mind is nothing but a habitual machine. It is just a program that you very intentionally can program if you choose to do that. And so so then you get to a point where you can just be with it. It comes, it's there, and it goes. And then you didn't kill an insect. You weren't disturbed in your concentration, and your heart was steady the whole time. And then all of a sudden, now you're living a life that's less violent, which is this point number 4. We can train our mind to perceive things accurately. Is this true? What a statement. I gotta fire that guy. I gotta lie on the thing. I gotta not tell them the truth. Is that true? Or is that just a mindless reaction to some kind of stress in your life? Is what you're deciding valid in its basis or invalid in its basis? Will it dissolve under you and drop you into cycles of suffering, or will it help you to stride across cycles of suffering with a different story? The thing with a valid basis brings you across the ocean. The thing with an invalid basis dissolves and drops you into the ocean. So, we can train our mind to perceive things accurately. Oh, and the definition of that is a way which is consistent with how things actually are, not in the way that you think they are, but in the way that they actually are. You want to get those into a state of yoga. Yoga meaning to join up. You want to join up your perception of truth with actual truth because we are so much not in a state of yoga in so much of our life where what is actually true is not what we think is true. And then we live a life of suffering. So by joining up our mind with truth, an accurate perception of how things are, in that way we can then actually live life meaningfully. Otherwise, we get caught in the currents of illusion and find ourselves a mile offshore and panicking, not sure how we got there. And that is not a happy place. And the people who love you don't want to see you there. So, where do we go from here? We like to be at Spiritual Warrior. We like to be predictive in the flow. It's a very, very good way to read a text is where do we go next? And before you read it, try to think it. Omniscience helps us help all people. Omniscience has a cause. Here's how consciousness works that then tells us how we can train our mind to approach omniscience. So, if we train our mind, then we can live meaningfully. So, the next part is what does it mean to live meaningfully? That's where we're going next, according to the Buddhist tradition. So, I'm going to take an excerpt from the root text, the Bhavanakrama by Kamalashila, written in 700 AD. It's so cool. Uh, That is that old and that true. All right, here we go. Also, from among these causes and conditions, you should cultivate correct and complete causes. If you put the wrong causes into practice, if you put the wrong causes into practice, even if you work hard for a long time, the desired goal cannot be achieved. And I love this. It will be like milking a cow's horn. Like imagine that someone's like, "Yeah, you get milk from a cow." And you're like, "Okay, cool, cool, cool. Got it, got it." And they're like, "But how?" And they're like, "Find that long pointy thing and then just like yank on it." Which is really strange, first of all. But then second of all, you go for the horn instead of the udder. Doesn't matter how hard you yank on that thing, you ain't ever gonna get milk. And so what I find, especially in the spiritual warrior community, is that we have extremely talented people in this community. And what we found is that we go and we get really good at milking cows' horns. And we're like, man, I'm the best horn milker. You know? And people look at you and you're like, damn, look at him milk that horn. You know, like he's put a lot of work into that. That guy's smart. That girl has worked hard. They've studied the books, you know. But then what actually is coming from all of that discipline? It's something. And so I wrote a post on this called A Sharply Meaningless Blade. Like you've become the fiercest warrior and you have a perfectly sharp blade, but you're fighting the wrong battles. So we should wake up as soon as possible to what is actually meaningful to us, which only you can determine for yourself. But wake up to the cow's horn. All right. So Kamalashila is imploring us to not practice the wrong causes. Likewise, the result will not be produced when all the causes are not put into effect, which is just, you'll find there's a bunch of Indian logic. They'll say, don't do this thing, and then you won't get it unless you do the right thing. So he just does that. For example, if the seed or any other cause is missing, then the result, a sprout, and so forth, will not be produced. Again, it's very simple logic. This is not earth-shattering. The implications are, but the logic is very kindergarten, but we forget it. If the seed ain't there, you ain't getting a fruit, right? So what seeds are we planting? So then the question we have to ask is, well, what seeds am I planting all day? Um, Therefore, so now here's the conclusion, which brings us into today's class. Therefore, those who desire a particular result should cultivate its complete and unmistaken causes and conditions. Kamla Sheila, what are they? Tell us. So now we get into the teaching. Be a bodhisattva. And today felt like a good day to talk about this. Bodhisattva translates to spiritual warrior. Yay! Sattva comes from the Sanskrit word sat, which comes into words like sanctuary, or what's another one? Um, it means pure. That's what it means. Like the thing which is pure. And in this tradition, what that means is truth, like ultimate truth. And then Bodhi uh, indicates a couple different things. But basically, what we're trying to do is live ultimate truth in every single thing that we do. What is the most true thing that we could ever embody? And so I love this next verse in the root text. Moved by compassion. That's how he starts, which is an instruction. And if you remember from class one, compassion is the beginning of the path. Sorry, it's the entry to the path, the beginning of the path, the middle of the path, and the end of the path is compassion. That's the entire path of Buddhism. That's the entire path of yoga. And so if you don't start with this feeling, you're already lost. Moved by compassion. If you're being moved by anything but compassion, then you should really question why it is that you're moving at all. People are so fixed, and by people I mean me, on action that they don't even ask why they're acting. They're like, yeah, let's just go. Let's go, 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 go. And you're like, but why? And where are you going? And what do you believe to be true? And what story are you telling yourself in this action? Oh, I'm so busy. Isn't that cool? No. Like in our culture, it's like such a like people brag about how busy they are. And you're just like, yeah, but where are you going? And like look at the mess you're making. Goodness gracious. You're a wreck. Like look at all that all that action is only creating just chaos. I'm so sorry. But you should really think about why you're acting.
Somebody's got to milk the horn, you know? So,
We got all these horns to milk, dude. Someone's got to do it. So the very first thing in Kamala Shila's instructions, so we just went through this huge logical framework, which is extremely dry, extremely theoretical. And now we're getting into what to do about it. Because if we don't have a logical basis, then our actions won't accumulate. They won't add up. Moved by compassion, bodhisattvas take the vow to liberate all sentient beings. Whoa, big statement. To do that, one must have the discipline of a warrior because it is not easy to do this. First of all, it's not easy to actually be the slave of compassion. Like, we're so often the slave of our senses, we're so often the slave of our pleasure. But how that has that been a reliable source of happiness in our life? But we're so much the slave of it. To be the slave of our compassion is infinitely more challenging. Because we're so easily robbed of our master. And so it's like, and by slave, what we're really meaning is that we're giving up our agency to anything which isn't that. In the same way that, I've given my heart to Hannah in a way that's it, man. That's it. And so the that's where I'm at. And there ain't nowhere else that I'm at. Or like Lily's my daughter. Like there ain't anything other than that. And so we to to be robbed of that would be to destroy the specialness of those things which are the most precious to me. And so the Bodhisattva takes a vow, and that vow is that same level of commitment that, I just alluded to. But the vow is to liberate all sentient beings. And we'll get into this in the Tuesday classes on how to meditate, but it's really incredible when we think about, well, I want great things for me. That gets boring after you've gotten a lot of great things. It's lonely and it's very unsustainable in the joy that it gives you because you can't consume your way to happiness. You can't accumulate your way to joy and peace. And so you realize that your heart yearns to share. It just does. And by sharing the beautiful things in life, that it just amplifies the happiness that you thought you would get from accumulating or something or consuming. And so then you ask yourself, well, what is the greatest thing that I can accumulate and what is the greatest thing then by virtue of the logic we just shared, then what is the greatest thing I can give? The greatest thing that you can give to yourself, the greatest thing you can accumulate for yourself is to liberate yourself from suffering. Of course, like you don't want to be unhappy. You want to be happy. Okay, great. So the gift that I give to myself is to be happy, truly happy. The most profound happy, the unshakable kind, the kind which even when the world is crumbling around you, your heart is content and is peaceful and is focused on important things, like taking care of others, being peaceful. So then what's the greatest thing that you could give? It's that same thing that you would give yourself. And so then what you would do is you help all other people to become free of suffering. Because when we think about the people we love most and we see them suffer, that's the thing which breaks our heart the most. I'm not torn up when someone I love gets cancer. I'm torn up by their suffering when they feel themselves having cancer. if someone has cancer and they're just 10 out of 10 blissed out, why would I what is my I have no place to be like that's wrong because they're like I'm totally fulfilled right now, dude. And so I don't want to solve their hunger. I don't want to solve their illness. What do I actually want to solve? I want to solve their suffering. How many hungry people? I lived in an extremely poor village for 18 months. That is the happiest community that I've ever been part of. Okay? So tell me that poverty makes people unhappy. No, man, people make people unhappy. By giving those people wealth, in a conventional sense, destroyed them because they had no education around finances. And so they just they were given a Ferrari, but they haven't even learned how to, drive a Camry. It's gonna be a bad thing. And so you're not helping people by doing that. And so what I actually want to do is relieve people's suffering. And that's what the Bodhisattva desires in such an intense and irreversible commitment that it is a vow. So Bodhisattva, out of compassion, vows to liberate all beings from suffering and its causes. May I reach enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Why reach enlightenment? Not for me, dude. Yeah, for me. Okay, sure. Like, no doubt. Like, sign me up. However, if you really push me to ask me why, it's actually so that I could be of some use to other people. Like, think about being an absolute wreck and trying to help others. You're not actually helping them. Like, I've watched enough anime where that young guy who's like, I shall fight. And the master's like, please just stand off to the side. You're making everything worse. And there's like, but my honor. And they're just like, please, please just no. And so, like, if you actually wanted to help, then you would become the best version of you. And so the vow of a bodhisattva is to wish to become the best version of you for the sake of everyone, because only when you are the best version of you could you actually help anybody. Otherwise, you look like that really silly kid with the water gun going to war. It's like, no, man. You're it's only going to increase suffering. Like I love the heart. It's a good attitude, but we need to mature this. We need to develop this. And so this determination, this vow, this wish is the awakening mind of bodhicitta. And so the bodhisattva is the one who is the warrior emblazoned in upholding that vow. And the mind, the chitta of that warrior is called bodhicitta. And what that is the wish to become enlightened for the sake of all beings. And I love this translation of it being the awakening mind of bodhicitta. Because if you really let that dream become an awakened reality in your mind of a world that's free of suffering, your mind wakes up. Like, think about when you're engaged in doing something really sweet for someone you love, whether it's your lover or your teacher or your parent or something. You're like making a surprise party for them or something, or you're like making a little gift or baking a cake. Like, what's the quality of your mind? It is awake, right? You're so alive. Like, life is so good. You're just so, the source of energy is pure because you're moved by compassion. And so your heart has woken up to its true purpose, which is by definition enlivening. It's like your whole life you've been thirsty and you've been drinking salt water. And then someone was like, dude, wake up and drink clean water. And you drink clean water and you're like, wait a minute. how long has this been around? And they're like, the whole time, man. And you're like, oh my gosh, thank you for waking me up. I'm finally being quenched. And my whole life I've been thirsty. And the thing which I've been drinking has been poison, actually. It's been making me sick. And I've made do because I'm a warrior. And that's what warriors do, is that they work hard despite adverse conditions, especially in adverse conditions. But hey, if we're working hard, stop milking a horn. Here's an udder. And so the mind which has woken up, the thing which wakes it up is bodhicitta. The thing which wakes the heart up, the thing which wakes the mind up, is that wish to serve all beings. It is such a true north. And then what happens by waking up and going on that path of awakeness is that you finally, truly become awake to what a valid support of consciousness is. Because of that kindness, illusion reveals itself. You're like, you're no longer caught in false things because the purity of your awakeness is so powerful that illusion stands no chance. It's like a shadow in the wake of the sun. Someone's like, yeah, dude, just punch that guy in the face. And you're like, no, that is utterly ridiculous. They're like, no, 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 dude, here's a horn. Come on, bro, milk it. And you're like, I'm far too awake. I'm so sorry. I'm far too awake to be lost in your nightmare. The blazing sun of my truth is so embodied in me that the shadow of your illusion stands no chance. I just cannot buy it. I've been in the darkness and I do not prefer it. I've lost myself and my friends in that place, and I have vowed against creating more shadow. I have vowed to be the sun. Damn, that was some hard shit there, guys. I'm sorry. I just like really enjoyed saying that. Okay, so what do we do? Once that wish is in our heart, what do we do about it? Because a new kind of suffering actually begins, which is to be awake to the truth, to have felt the truth, but then to not know how to live it is a very stressful thing, right? Because you've become awake now that you don't want to hurt people anymore in the profoundest sense. And you want to become the best version of you. And so you start to see things and you're like, well, what is not hurting others? Because it's not clear cut. It's extremely gray. It takes wild, wildly sharp discernment to be able to determine whether this thing I'm doing is actually love, or maybe it's pride masquerading as love. Interesting. So we are offered what are called the six perfections, and this is where the text goes next. And I really love the definition of the Sanskrit, the etymological roots of the Sanskrit for perfections. Incredibly instructive. And you know me, I love Sanskrit. So here we go. Paramita. Very cool. So there's two different ways that we can interpret this, and you'll find with this with Sanskrit is that the meaning, there's multiple meanings and they're all true, which is how you can identify a really skillful author, is that they'll have one word which encompasses many meanings, and each one of them is true. So the first one is parama, which means highest or most excellent, or, and this is my favorite one, most distant, because it goes with para, which is on the other side. So, what are the ways that we should live? We should live in the most excellent ways. We should live in the most highest ways possible. So these are called the six perfections. How to live. What are the attitudes? What are the positions of our heart? What are the approaches to life? They're the paramitas. And then para, which by the way comes into English in perimeter, because the perimeter is the furthest part. Like, I need you to guard the perimeter. Like that is the furthest, most distant part. So we can see para come into perimeter in that way. And then para means beyond or the other side, specifically connoting or connotating a shore to the other shore. And then mita, which originally comes from ita, means to go or that which goes. And then mita means that which has arrived. So it's to go and to arrive to the other side of suffering. So the perfections are the things which take us to the other side of suffering. If we work to perfect ourselves with these attitudes, then we ourselves become perfect. And we have then crossed over to perfection. Really beautiful. So, what does that actually mean? Now that we understand the flavor of the word of perfection, what is it? What is it to be perfect? According to this lineage, this is what it means, which is what I love because like what a big daunting question. But here's a starting point. And as we've said before, and we'll say over and over and over again, don't believe this. Test it for yourself. Try it on for size. It has to make sense to you, or else it won't work. So the first of the perfections is giving. We start with giving. Okay, so what can we give? There's four different things that we can give. We can give physical things, we can give love, we can give protection, and we can give wisdom. Really beautiful. And we're not going to get into six perfections. One day, I would love to honestly do a 12-month program on this. One day. Because, I mean, this is amazing. If you really became present with what is being taught here, you'll see that it's exquisite. It's an exquisite way to live. And this is really expounded upon. These have been expounded upon for as long as there have been teachings. But probably the most classic, beautiful presentation that I'm aware of is the Bodhisattvacharya Avatara, which was written by Master Shantideva at actually kind of the same time as this text, the Bhavanakrama, written by Master Kamalashila. So it's kind of cool. Shantideva preceded Kamalashila. Anyway, giving. So we should give. And what this means is not to give away everything that you own. That is not what this means. What this means is that when you see people who need things, that you give it to them without hesitation because you see their need as equally important as your own need. And you don't have a hierarchy or a priority of, I'm more important than you. Me being comfortable is more important than you being comfortable. And I think that is really difficult to consider this in a world like today, where we see war and we see so much extremely difficult things where people don't have enough. I think that's very daunting and actually it becomes a little confusing. So I really like to think of this in terms of literally one person. Because if I can do this perfectly with one person, then from that place I can do it for everybody. Um, because I've learned the flavor, right? I've learned the musical scale, which then I can interpret into an infinite amount of songs. Um, and so I like to think of this with my partner, Hannah. So can I do this with at least her? And what I found is that anytime I don't do this, I begin to observe our relationship deteriorate in very subtle ways at first because, we hold each other to a very high level of standard. We don't really permit each other to not be giving. Like it's like when it doesn't occur, we look at each other and we're like, well, that was weird. And then we're like, that's not what we do. It's really nice. It's very sweet. And then we hold each other accountable. We're like, hmm, why did you do that? It's not like you're bad. It's like, that's strange. That's not what we do. And then we're like, okay, cool, let's be better. Great. Okay, cool. And then we move on. It is the foundation of an extraordinary relationship with anybody that you love, and therefore, because we love everybody in the world, it is the extraordinary foundation for everybody, because our vow is to liberate all beings from suffering, which means that we don't prefer our own suffer or we don't prefer our own liberation over other people's liberation. So what could we give? Ultimately, we'd love to give people a way out of suffering forever. So that's giving. Um, it's an attitude. It's not a result. The result is the attitude, which I think is extraordinary. Can I live in a way where I could give somebody my own body in the moment that they needed it without hesitation? Because I know I'm going to die and lose this body anyway, and I won't have any control over what happens then. So now, while I have control over it, let me use it for others. Which is why we give blood, because I'm not ready to give you my eyeball, but I can give you my blood. So it's a really nice way to practice giving. Then we live ethically, because the result of giving perfectly is that we come into a state of abundance. Thinking that there's not enough to give is the highway of scarcity. To know that generosity is the essence of abundance, all of a sudden we begin to abide in abundance. Think about when you give. You feel great. You feel abundant. So what do you do now that you're being overwhelmed with things coming for you? You need to keep them. And the way that you keep them is through ethical living. So that's why it logically goes into ethics. And then I'm going to speed up a little bit here. Um, so we live ethically. That is a perfection. To know that causes and effects is the reality. And so we should make good causes. And good causes is what ethics is. It's to live in a way that causes good things. And then the art of not getting angry, which is my favorite definition of the Sanskrit, which is kshanti. People often define it as patience. Harder to understand translation is forbearance. I love the way that my teacher translated it, which is the art of not getting angry. I think that that's extraordinary. When someone punches you in the face, when someone has perfected this attitude of not getting angry, the first thought of that person is, I am so sorry that you live in so much pain that you could think that punching me in the face would bring happiness to you. Like, your anger breaks my heart for your sake. Like, I'm good. You can punch me all you want. I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, cut off my arm. I'm unshakable, dude. I don't I don't milk horns. I don't live like that anymore. Whatever you do to me can't shake my establishment in my truth. And so I'm so sorry that you're still stuck in illusion. And I really want to help you because I know that the reason you're hurting me is because you think it'll help you, but it never could. And in fact, you hurting me is only guaranteeing future pain for you. That is the attitude of the art of not getting angry. Think about a life like that, guys. My God, so free. It's so liberated. You become a buoy, which could never lose buoyancy, no matter how much the world tries to drag you down. You simply are incapable of stooping to the level of hatred and violence. Okay, great. So then, joyful effort, which is then really, really taking great joy in living beautifully, which is the culmination of the prior three. What does it look like to do those three? It looks like ecstatic joy. And there's a very specific qualification to this. In a state of complete application of self. It's really funny. I talk with founders of companies, and these are some of the students here, and and they're so nervous about what I teach because they're like, "But what if I become content?" I'm like, "Wait, hold on, what?" They're like, "But what if I just want to hug trees all day because I've really learned what you're teaching?" I'm like, dude, wouldn't that be awesome? And they're like, no. And I was like, why? Right? Because now we have an opportunity to analyze this story. Because I become complacent, and I would say, then you haven't learned anything. You've missed every single thing that I could have ever taught you. Complacency and contentment are completely not the same. Like, no. If you made a vow to liberate all beings from suffering, how would you spend your life? You would be applying yourself to the very maximum of your capacity, and you would be desperate to increase your capacity. You would not be sitting there gazing at your navel. You would not be there just lost in pleasant sensation. You would be exposing yourself to incredibly intense, uncomfortable situations over and over and over and over again because you would be where people need you most, which are, by definition, extraordinarily challenging conditions. The great sages of our lineage, yes, could be found in caves, but guess what they did after they had found truth? They literally, and this is historic, right? This is not myth. Like these are people with written histories that historians, not, religious fanatics or something like this is written history. They went out into the middle of battlefields and stopped war. That's where you find the great practitioners. Not hugging trees. But yeah, okay. Maybe they hugged a tree. Like, why is that a big deal? Like, why would you get upset about someone just like really being in communion with pure love? Like, why would you? They brought that pure love to the battlefield where men slaughter each other because they know it first. How many of us have put in the work to find it, to even then bring it to a place of such darkness as the battlefield of war, and with such brightness that it stopped the war, for crying out loud? Like, okay, go make another app. The world needs another app. Congratulations. You know what I mean? Uh, the one who stopped, what was it? I want to get the history correct. And Alexa, you might know this, so help me out here. It's in our lineage. I think like the 13th lineage holder. I don't remember his name. Goodness, I'm so sorry. But he was the one who converted the Mongolian, like Genghis Khan. No, Kublai Khan. Who was the first one? Kublai or Genghis? Do you know where I'm going with this, Alexa? Oh, you're muted. Okay, anyway, so one of the Khans was ruthless, right? The reason the Khan became the Khan was because somebody poisoned his family members, I think, right in front of him, and he vowed. And I'm probably getting this history wrong, but the essence is there. He vowed to destroy those people and become the most powerful man in the world. And guess what he did? Right? So, out of vengeance, out of complete bereft pain of violence, he became the most violent and subjected the largest quantity of humans under a single dominion that Earth has ever known, other than Alexander the Great. His grandson, the inheritor of that kingdom, was then converted by one of our lineage holders and became a great Buddhist, which ushered in one of the most golden eras of Buddhist literature on Earth. And he vowed to peace. Right? So think about that. Who is it that did that? It's one who is moved by compassion. You could find him on the battlefield. That's where you find a spiritual warrior. And so, how, being moved by joyful effort, how can we be precise in our actions in the world? We do that through meditation because focus is the thing which obliterates distraction. And that's all that meditation is. It's concentration. It's having an intention and staying on it unwaveringly. That's the only thing meditation is. And then out of that, then we gain wisdom. And wisdom, one of my favorite definitions of wisdom is doing things which work, which we can see the opposite of wisdom is foolishness, which is doing things which could never work. How do we come to discern the difference? It's very important to have a level of concentration so that we could observe things clearly, so that the truth of reality matches up with our perception of reality. Otherwise, we're stuck milking horns. So now we're going to bring it to the lion's dance, which is the namesake of this entire series, because as you've heard, this meditation changed my life literally forever and ever and ever. I did this meditation, it changed the course of my entire life. And so one of the first big things I wanted to give in Spiritual Warrior was this meditation. And this meditation comes from a very long lineage, um, but this is one of the most concise ways to express it in a poem written by Master Sangha in 200 AD. Here it is, because it so beautifully overlaps with um, the Bhavana Krama, which is why I'm so excited because now we're starting to see how the texts that I wanted to relate are beginning to relate. The Stages of Meditation by Kamala Shila, the Yoga Sutra by Master Patanjali, and the Jewel Ornament of Realization by Master Sangha. All right, so here it is from the Jewel Ornament of Realization. Nothing more to clarify, nothing more to establish. Right, so this was written right after Master Sangha saw ultimate the ultimate nature of reality directly. He had that pure view. Nothing more to clarify, nothing more to establish. To look pure to the pure and see pure. This is what makes us free. This is the path of seeing. To embrace in a moment of mastery that giving and the rest, which are the six perfections, each and every one of them is inside each other. We go then into the deepness of meditation, the dance of the lion, and it leads us into exploring how each thing happens when another thing happens. Follow the spin, then spin it back. The poem continues, but that's the excerpt that really relates to what we're saying. Well, this teaching on the six perfections. Um, so if you've been following my work at the Yoga Studies Institute, I created a series of um, retreats called the Jewels of Perfection, inspired by this one verse. So we've raised at this point almost $100,000 for the monasteries of our lineage, born out of that first retreat we did in India, which is so cool. Yay! I love that. Those monks are beautiful people, and I know what I know because of them. Um, and so this is how we're going to end the class. Nothing more to clarify, nothing more to establish, to look pure to the pure and see pure. So this is about seeing things in a valid way, seeing the true, seeing things for what they really are. That's what makes us free. Amazing. This path of seeing the truth. And then he defines it, which I think the colon is really good. Um, good. Geshe Michael is just one of the world's greatest poets. I truly do believe that. The path of seeing is to embrace in a moment of mastery that giving and the rest, each and every one of them is inside each the other. That is it. Okay, so that's where we get to now the jewels of perfection. And we do whole retreats on this. So this is all I'm going to be teaching about the six perfections in this series. Like I said, you can go really deep in these. What this is really meaning, guys, we have to ask, What is it that makes giving perfect? That thing is the jewel of perfection. If we think that we will make the world happy by feeding hungry people and that's it, we know that that's not true. Because a hungry person, once fed, becomes hungry again if we do not address the source of hunger. So giving could never actually bring us to that thing. And living ethically also won't do that because we could do our stuff, but what about everybody else doing their stuff? Like, really hard, man. Like, I'm over here trying to, do good stuff, and then my neighbor's like literally robbing other people, and you're just like, come on, man. Or my president is like bringing my country to war. Like, okay, I'm not gonna kill a mosquito, but like, come on now. The art of not getting angry. Like, so all of a sudden, all these things, if taken at face value, could never actually bring us to an entire world where all beings are liberated. And so we can feel kind of defeated. Well, why should I do it? Oh, well, it's good, it's good. And I feel I can sleep well at night knowing that I live my truth, which arguably that's enough reason. But how do we be moved by compassion in a way that has maximum horsepower? I think it's with the idea of actually believing that it could actually help everybody. And so, what does it mean to actually give in a way that's perfect, in a way that could paramita, that could bring us to the other side? Is to understand the emptiness of giving. What does that mean? It's to understand the emptiness of ethics. It's to understand the emptiness. It's to take what we've learned in our wisdom realization and apply that sixth into each one of the five. What it means to give in a way which understands emptiness means this. If we believe that that hungry person is an object which is perceivable because it exists out there independently of me, that is to misunderstand the nature of reality. The reason I see a hungry person is not because there is a hungry person. All right, follow me here. If every result has a cause, which that makes sense, right? Every effect has a cause. You can't have a cause without an effect. If there was effects without causes, then the world would just be complete and utter chaos, right? Purple elephants would pop in and out of existence randomly. We could milk horns and get milk if there wasn't a cause and effect. Because it wouldn't matter if there was a cause for milk producing or horns producing milk. They just could sometimes and wouldn't other times. But the truth is that there is a cause for every effect. Your perception of reality is an effect. It is a result. Why are you the way that you are? You're the way that you are because you've been the way that you've been. When someone says, I'm unlovable, and they say that over and over and over again, they become unlovable. First to themselves and then to others. Because that's the cause. When someone says, you know what? I actually really appreciate myself. Guess what happens? You become a gift to everyone who sees you, right? Like you become something beautiful and shining. And so you are the way that you are because of who you've been. And that is not only true for subjects, the subject being I, but also to objects, which is everything out there. The reason you see hungry people is not because there are hungry people out there. The reason you see hungry people is because you have created hunger in the world by not giving. The nature of people out there is that they are empty and they're waiting for your perception to fill them. Oh, my mom is like this. Oh, really? Because I don't see her like that. You know, my mom's really nice. Really? Because she's totally seeming like a jerk to me right now. So, is my mom nice or is my mom a jerk? If things existed in their own way, independent of perception of them, then everybody would be forced to see it the same way. Oh, that's good. Is it? Oh, yeah, yeah, money's good. Money's really good. Is it? Oh, money's bad. Money's really bad. Is it? Depends who's looking. Because it doesn't come from it. It comes from you. You're the one who makes money good. You're the one who makes money bad. You're the one who makes a beer good. You're the one who makes a beer bad. You're the one who makes a yoga practice good. You're the one who makes a yoga practice bad. So, what is a yoga practice? What is money? It is empty of any qualities of its own, which means you supply them. So, what does that mean about the jewel of the perfection? The reason why you see somebody who needs to be given something is because you have had some level of scarcity in the past, in one perception of it. In another perception of it, you are seeing somebody showing up in your world to give you the chance to create a new cause, to replace the old cause with the new cause. You're getting a chance to refresh your deck, to change the film, to swap out the seeds. Instead of the one which gives you thorny bushes, here's the one which gives you watermelons. If you didn't have the chance to change, then you'd be stuck. And so understanding the emptiness of the act of giving and the one who needs to be given a thing and the thing which you are actually giving, is food good? Depends. Are they allergic to it? Right? Is it, is the food good? There's this weird thing in America where we don't have hunger, but we have malnutrition. We give people so much food, but we don't give them nutrition. Is food actually solving hunger? In a very weird way, yes and no, because the food is empty, right? Just giving the idea of food, giving food has no qualities. To one person, it's exactly what they need, but to another person, it's now a perpetuation of their malnourishment. Weird, right? So the food is empty. The person I'm giving to is only hungry because I have the causes to see a world of hunger. And even I am empty. I am coming from a previous identity of me. And I'm forcing to see myself in this way right now, not because I am that way, but because I've been that way. And so now, in this radical moment of the present, I have the chance to choose how I show up in the world. I choose to see the person in front of me as somebody who's giving me a chance to create abundance in the world. I choose to see the thing which I'm giving them as something which is an embodiment of my love. And I'm choosing to see myself as somebody who's moved by compassion, who sees things with wisdom, who understands that by giving perfectly, in a way which understands causes and effects, in a way that understands emptiness, I am creating a future in the present whose causes are beautiful. And I've done the work to know what that means. Those are the jewels of perfection. is to have these attitudes with wisdom, moved by compassion. So let's go back to our flow and we'll land today's class. The text starts with omniscience helps us help all beings. If I was aware, I could actually help. Which is to say, if I'm unaware, it's very difficult to help. Because omniscience is simply the highest expression of awareness. It's being perfectly aware of all things. Omniscience is not random. Omniscience has a cause, meaning we can make causes for that effect. It can be developed. It is a developable thing. It is a path which is worth approaching. Right? Whether we can become omniscient or not, that's for you to decide. But to endeavor, I think, is a worthwhile journey. So to understand omniscience, we must understand consciousness. Consciousness requires a subject and an object. What is the nature of subject and object? Do they exist independently out there? Do subject and object have an inherent quality? No, of course not. I'm different now than I was yesterday, right? So there's nothing inherent about I. It's a constant changing thing. The only thing inherent to I is that it changes, which is to say that it's available for change, which is to say that it's empty and can be filled with a constant changing stream of perception. I'll tell you what, and Jeremy knows I'm different today than I was in middle school, right? I've changed. I've known Jeremy for a long time. That's why I can say that. And even Alexa, you've known me for quite some time now too. I've changed even in the last 3 years. I've changed from this morning to today, or to right now, right? So I is not a fixed, unchanging thing. I is a changing thing, which means something had to cause the change, which means every change has a cause, which means that there needed to be somewhere for the change to occur, which means that there is an emptiness at the center of all things, which creates the space for transformation. And the only place that that could ever exist is in the present moment. You can't change the past. The future hasn't happened. Transformation occurs in the present, which is why you can see in one moment a snake and in the next moment a rope once you've woken up to the illusion. You woke up to the nature of objects. To think that the snake is a snake and to not wake up that it's a rope would be to develop a consciousness on an invalid support because that ain't what it is. The snake ain't a snake, dude. The snake's a rope. If you develop your identity around that illusion, that misunderstanding, you're bound to suffer. Because things won't work when you try to work them. Because you don't understand how things work. And so, to develop our consciousness in a way that is valid, in a way which is by nature limitless, is to develop our consciousness on supports which are true. And the truth of reality, of objects and subjects, is that they are empty. They are filled by our past actions, thoughts, and speech. Those were the causes for the effect of our present moment. If I'm an asshole, I find myself in a world of assholes. Okay. And guess who the asshole is? Right? All right. Um, so if we understand the difference, at least theoretically, between valid and invalid supports, then we need to train our mind. Because the mind left untrained is a tragedy. And the mind, left trained on wrong things, on horns which could be milked, is also a tragedy. One of great capacity could spend their whole life milking horns, and that's a damn shame. They'll be hungry, they'll be thirsty, but caught drinking salt water, never knowing that clean water was a choice, was an option. And that's why we should be grateful to our teachers, because our teachers show us the difference. Left to our own devices, we'll spend lifetimes drinking salt water. And then once in an eon, by accident, we might find clean water. But a teacher can do that in one lifetime. It's like when I was playing bass and my teacher was like, dude, don't do it like that. I was like, wow, thanks. That would have taken me a long time to figure out. We train our mind to perceive things accurately, in a valid way, in a way which is truth, in a way where it is consistent with how they actually are, because that's rooted in the valid support of truth, which is limitless by nature. And in this way, we can now live meaningfully instead of trivially. We might seek meaning in pure intention, but not know what that actually means. And so, in this way, we can actually have that come to fruit. So, what does that look like? And that was today's class. First, we're moved by compassion. That's what it means. If nothing else, that's what it means. The Buddha said, I didn't write this one down because I was like, I have 2 minutes. This is going to take too long, but it's so perfect right now. I know how to find it quickly. This is so sweet. And the Compendium of Perfect Dharma reads, O Buddha, a bodhisattva should train in many practices. If a bodhisattva properly holds to one dharma and learns it perfectly, he has all the Buddha's qualities in the palm of his hand. And a Buddha is just shorthand for a perfect being, one who's done the work and got the fruit. That's all a Buddha is. If a bodhisattva properly holds to one dharma, one truth, and learns it perfectly, he has all the Buddha's qualities in the palm of his hand. And if you ask what one dharma is, it is great compassion. That's sutra. Moved by compassion, bodhisattvas vow to liberate all sentient beings. How? By practicing the six perfections and understanding them perfectly. Ah, that's class. Yay. Questions, comments, concerns, discussion, reactions, responses, weather reports.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Thank our teacher.
Cheers, bro.
It's getting
So,
hot as always.
well, Sophie, you missed. Yeah, you dropped in right.
Getting to the hottest spot.
Sophie has this thing where apparently, whenever Sophie, that's when I'm like hitting the conclusion. So all the build up, and then Sophie's like, "Hi, everyone," and you're like, anyway, thanks for showing up, Sophie.
No, thank you so much, Bob, as always. Yeah, I need to replay, of course, but it was great, even to be in the last 10 minutes.
Thank you, Bob. I feel like there were like about no, I'm not going to count. There were an infinity of amazing things I wrote down that blew my mind, and I'm like just um marinating in it.
Thanks, Becky.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bob. It's such a great way to start my morning. It was 5 a.m. here, and it was like, whoa, I don't know if I'm ready for all these. But then it's like, what else could I be doing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Alex. I appreciate you. Um, so now feels like a good moment to reiterate this. I seemingly by nature of me go full throttle in a near constant state. So if you ever want to like dig in deep onto any one of the things that I've shared, um, please ask because I will respond. And that's for everybody in the recordings too. The nature of these teachings, which is such a freaking mind trip, is this like a hall of mirrors where every single image contains every single image. Right? In one sentence, the Buddha taught the entire path. If you only did one thing, it would be compassion. And then boom, there's the entire that's everything. Right? So in one word, you get the whole path. And the Yoga Sutras, the second verse, is literally the entire school of yoga, the definition of yoga, the practice of yoga, and the state of yoga. Yoga is stopping the way the mind turns things around. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. In 4 words, you have the entire path. So, depending on who's looking, something might resonate as really meaningful. And you're like, let me double click on that one. Let me lean on that one. And uh so any one of these things you could unfold into an infinity, um, which is worthwhile. So please ask me to do that if you would like that. My literal purpose for being is exactly that. So it would not be a burden. It would be a divine joy. Because I don't, I'm not very good at going slow or something like that. So I understand that there's a lot of big ideas that just come out. So say pause, you know. All right, cool. What happens next is that we take a little break. For those of you who this is your last stop on the train ride, thank you so much for coming. I love you. I hope that that was empowering. As with all things, the purpose here is to empower you to live fearlessly on purpose. Know the truth, familiarize yourself with the truth, and then in that familiarization and practice, go live it fearlessly because it's true. Everything else is invalid. The truth is valid, and the shadow will always succumb to the sun. So may you shine a little bit brighter today. We're going to come back in 15 minutes and get into the lion's dance and then the 9 levels of samadhi according to the Yoga Sutra. So take a break, get some tea, take a stretch, get some sun on your face, and I'll see you in 15 minutes. Peace out.
It's gonna be the same link? Oh.
Oh, I'm here. Don't worry. Yeah, we're gonna stay here.
Ah, okay. Perfect. Yeah, see you then.
Okay, see you.